Esther froze mid-step, her back to me, the curve of her shoulders taut under that silk blouse I'd once traced with my fingers like it was a map to her soul. The bar's patrons, old men nursing their anisettes, a couple of tourists snapping pics of the hanging hams, didn't even glance our way. In Spain, drama was just another spice in the paella. But for me, Mary Ellis, this was the unraveling of everything I'd built on lies. She turned slowly, her dark curls plastered to her forehead from the downpour we'd dashed through, those deep brown eyes locking onto mine with a fire that could scorch the Alcazar to ash. Truth. You've been feeding me scraps of it for months, Carino. If this is your big reveal, make it count, before I decide you're not worth the storm. That was the night it all cracked open, 6 months after I'd flown into Malaga with a fake ID, a fabricated backstory, and a knot in my gut the size of the Strait of Gibraltar. I'd come to Spain chasing a ghost story, or so my editor back in New York had called it, a lead on corruption in the olive oil trade that could topple empires. Esther's family, the Valverdes, owned half the groves in Andalusia, their bottles lining shelves from Madrid to Manhattan. Whispers said they cut corners with pesticides, bribed inspectors, poisoned the land for profit. My job? Infiltrate, expose, win a Pulitzer. Simple, right? Except nothing in life, or love, is ever that clean. I'd met her at a flamenco show in a dimly lit cave bar in the Triana neighborhood, the kind of place where the walls weep with history and the guitar strings snap like heartstrings. Posing as Mary, the artist from Brooklyn, I'd bumped into her, literally, spilling sangria down her white linen dress. She laughed it off, that throaty, unfiltered laugh that made my rehearsed lines falter. Esther was 32. A painter who traded the family's corporate boardrooms for canvases splashed with the fiery reds of sunset over the Guadalquivir. She was all curves and contradictions, olive skin glowing under the Mediterranean sun, a tattoo of an olive branch twisted into a serpent on her wrist, a family heirloom she wore like a warning. And me? At 28, I was all angles, sharp cheekbones, green eyes that lied too easily, auburn hair I dyed every 6 weeks to match whatever cover I needed. We clicked over shared cigarettes and stories of escaping family expectations. By dawn, she'd kissed me under the bridge arches, her lips tasting of salt and possibility. Stay, she'd whispered. And fool that I was, I did. Those first weeks were a blur of stolen moments in the labyrinthine streets of Seville. We'd wander the Barrio Santa Cruz, hand in hand, dodging horse-drawn carriages and vendors hawking azulejo tiles. She'd drag me to her studio in the old tobacco factory district, a sun-drenched loft where the air hummed with turpentine and her laughter. I'd pose for her sketches, pretending the way her gaze lingered on the hollow of my throat was just artistic license. You're like a storm cloud over the Sierra Nevada, she'd say, charcoal smudging her fingers as she captured me. Dark, but promising rain. I'd laugh, pull her close, and lose myself in the softness of her, the way she'd sigh against my neck like I was her anchor in a sea of family scandals she never quite named. But the assignment gnawed at me. Late nights, after she'd fallen asleep tangled in my arms, I'd slip out to shadowed groves on the outskirts, notebook in hand, interviewing jittery workers under the cover of olive trees that whispered secrets in the wind. The stories piled up, poisoned aquifers, falsified tests, a foreman who'd lost his farm to accidental contamination. Esther's brother, Javier, was the villain in the piece, slick-suited heir apparent, more interested in Dubai deals than dirt under his nails. I needed proof, something irrefutable, and getting close to Esther was my golden ticket. Invitations to family fincas, overheard boardroom calls, a key to the safe that held the ledgers. It was all falling into place, except for the way my heart tripped over itself every time she looked at me like I was real. By month 3, the lines blurred. We'd escaped to the whitewashed hills of Ronda, picnicking on Manchego and Membrillo under cliffs that plunged into mist-shrouded gorges. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, painting the Puente Nuevo in gold, she turned to me with that vulnerable tilt to her head. Mary, why do you flinch when I mention the groves? It's like you're carrying a ghost. I froze, fork midway to my mouth, and for a heartbeat, I almost confessed. Instead, I leaned in, kissed her slow and deep, letting the taste of her drown the guilt. Because your world's so vast, and I'm just a speck, I murmured. Lies wrapped in half-truths, but her smile, God, that smile, made it feel like absolution. We built a rhythm, Esther and I, mornings in her kitchen, her teaching me to roll perfect tortilla española while humming old Sephardic lullabies her abuela had sung. Afternoons sketching in the Alcazar gardens, where peacocks strutted like forgotten royalty and fountains murmured approvals. Evenings on her rooftop terrace, stars wheeling overhead as we shared bottles of her family's oil-drizzled wine, talking dreams. She wanted to launch a sustainable line, wrest control from Javier's greed. The land's in our blood, Mary. We can't bleed it dry. I'd nod, throat tight, fingers tracing the serpent tattoo that now felt like a brand on my own skin. But cracks spiderwebbed through the facade. Javier noticed first, his probing questions at family dinners in their sprawling hacienda outside Córdoba, eyes narrowing over his jamón ibérico. So, Mary from Brooklyn, what brings an artist to our dusty corner of the world? I'd spin tales of a Grant, a muse, Esther herself. He laughed, but it was the laugh of a man sizing up a rival. Then came the anonymous texts, she's playing you. Dig deeper. Paranoia. Or my editor's nudges from across the Atlantic. I deleted them, but sleep evaded me, dreams tangled with visions of Esther's face crumpling when the article dropped. Fall brought the harvest, and with it, the real test. The Valverde Grove stretched like emerald veins across the Jane countryside, workers in wide-brimmed hats shaking ancient trees while machinery hummed a mechanical dirge. Esther insisted I join the fiesta, the blessing of the first press, a ritual as old as the Moors. Dressed in a simple cotton sundress, I stood beside her in the Cortijo's courtyard, the air heavy with the green bite of crushed olives. Her father, Don Rafael, a weathered patriarch with eyes like polished onyx, raised a glass. To the earth that sustains us. His gaze lingered on me, appraising, and I wondered if he saw the fraud beneath the smile. That night, as the bonfires crackled and guitars wailed, Esther pulled me into the shadows of the mill house. I love you, Mary, she said, the words slipping out like olive oil from the press, smooth, inevitable. My world tilted. Love. This was reconnaissance, a means to an end. But as her hands cupped my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones, I whispered it back, and for the first time, it wasn't a script. We kissed there, amid the hum of the ancient stones, the scent of earth and her clinging to us like a vow. In that moment, the story I was chasing felt like a distant echo, drowned by the thunder of my pulse. The betrayal didn't come with fanfare, no thunderclap, no villainous monologue. It slithered in on a whisper of wind through the orange blossoms outside Esther's studio window, 3 days after the harvest moon. I'd been up all night, piecing together fragments, a pilfered email from Javier's laptop during a casual hacienda visit, lab reports buried in a cloud drive I'd hacked with a borrowed password. The evidence was damning, systematic dumping of chemicals into the river that fed half of Andalusia's farms. Lives ruined, not just livelihoods. My article was gold, my editor was already buzzing about front-page real estate in the New York Tribune. But as dawn bled pink across the sky, I sat on the edge of our bed, with its rumpled sheets scented like her lavender soap, and stared at the screen. Esther stirred beside me, murmuring in her sleep, one arm flung out as if reaching for the ghost I was about to become. I closed the laptop, heart hammering like a blacksmith's forge. Just one more week, I told myself. Verify the sources, get a whistleblower on record, then ghost. Clean break. But clean. With her. The word tasted like ash. She woke with that sleepy grace, stretching like a cat in sunlight, and pulled me down for a kiss that tasted of figs and forever. Morning, storm cloud. What's got you brooding before coffee? I forced a grin, buried my face in her neck. Just dreaming of Paris. You, me, the Louvre, skipping the tourists. She laughed, that sound like bells over the Giralda, and for an hour, we lost ourselves in lazy touches, the world reduced to the creak of the bed frame and her gasps against my ear. It was real, too real, and that's when the guilt coiled tight, a serpent in my belly. The week blurred into a fever dream. We drove the winding roads to Granada, the Alhambra's minarets piercing the sky like accusations. Esther sketched the intricate arabesques, her tongue between her teeth in concentration, while I snapped covert photos of irrigation canals choked with unnatural foam. "What's that?" she asked once, peering over my shoulder. I pocketed the phone quick. "Just composition ideas." Her brow furrowed, but she let it slide, trusting as ever. That night, in our pension room with its tiled floors and mosquito-netted bed, she traced the freckles across my collarbone. "You're holding something back, Mary. I feel it like a shadow." I rolled us over, pinned her gently, kissed away the question. "Only how much I need you," I lied, and we tumbled into the kind of lovemaking that felt like prayer, tender, fervent, sealing cracks I knew wouldn't hold. Back in Seville, the pressure mounted. Javier cornered me at a café near the Plaza de España, his cologne sharp as his smile. "Mary, right? Esther's little infatuation." He slid a photo across the table, me outside the groves, notebook in hand, talking to a worker. My blood iced. "We don't take kindly to snoopers. Family's everything here. Remember that." I played dumb, laughed it off as a mix-up, but inside, panic clawed. How much did he know? Was the leak from my side, or had I slipped? That night, I confronted my editor via encrypted call from a payphone in the Macarena district. "Pull the plug." "No way," he barked. "This is career-making. Get the interview with the old man, Raphael. Seal it." Desperation bred recklessness. I tailed Javier to a late-night meeting in a backroom of a Triana bar, the kind where deals were cut over smuggled cigars. Eavesdropping from the alley, rain sluicing down my hood, I caught gold, admissions of bribes, timelines matching the reports. Heart pounding, I dashed back to the apartment, scribbling notes by flashlight. Esther was waiting, arms crossed, a glass of Tinto de Verano in hand. "Where the hell have you been? It's 2 a.m. Her voice cracked, eyes stormy. I spun a yarn about a midnight inspiration, street artist. She searched my face, then deflated. "Mary, I'm scared." Javier's sniffing around, saying you're not who you say. And God, I can't lose you to whatever this is. I dropped the notebook, pulled her into my arms. "You won't. I promise." We clung there in the foyer, the door banging in the wind like a judge's gavel. Upstairs, she led me to the bed, undressing me with hands that trembled, not with desire, but doubt. "Tell me you're mine," she whispered, forehead to mine. "All of me," I breathed, and meant it, even as the lies stacked like unpaid debts. We moved together slow, like a tide pulling back before the crash, her body a landscape I memorized, the dip of her waist, the constellation of moles on her thigh, the way she arched when I whispered her name like a secret. But dawn brought the hammer. A frantic call from New York, sources drying up, Javier lawyering up. "Get Raphael to talk, today." I cornered the old man at the Hacienda's library, a cavern of leather-bound tomes and oil portraits glaring down. Don Raphael poured us sherry, his hand steady as the Sierra. "You love my daughter?" he asked, eyes piercing. I nodded, throat dry. "Then why the shadows, Nina? I see them in you." It was now or never. I laid it out, the rumors, the evidence, pleading for his side. He sighed, long and weary, then slid a folder across the desk. "Not rumors. Truths we've buried. Javier's folly, not mine. Take it. For her, for the land." Elation surged, then crashed. The folder held confessions, receipts, a path to redemption for the Valverdes if they pivoted green. But exposing it meant exposing Esther's world, her heart. I raced back to Seville, folder burning in my bag, only to find her studio dark, a note on the easel, "Found your notebook. Triana Bar, midnight. We end this." My stomach plummeted. She'd seen the notes from the alley. The game was up. The rain that night was biblical, turning streets to rivers as I splashed toward the bar. Esther was there, at our corner table, face pale as the ghosts of flamenco dancers passed. "Sit," she said, voice steel. I did, dripping, the folder sodden in my lap. "Mary Ellis, or whatever your real name is. Journalist? Spy? How long have you been playing me?" The words landed like lashes. I opened my mouth, but she cut me off, sliding my notebook across, pages I'd left hidden, now dog-eared with her tears. "The Groves. The workers. Me as your key. God, I was so blind." "Esther, listen," but she was on her feet, chair scraping like a scream. "No. You waltzed in with your Brooklyn charm, made me fall, and it was all for a byline. My family, Mary. The only thing I have left after Mama died fighting their poison." Her voice broke, and mine with it. I stood, reached for her, but she recoiled. "Don't. Just tell me one truth. Was any of it real?" The bar spun, patrons blurring into judgment. "All of it," I choked. "The love, God, yes. I came for the story, but you rewrote me." She searched my eyes, then laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Too late. Get out. Before Javier finds you. He won't ask questions." She stormed into the night, leaving me adrift in the deluge, the weight of the folder pulling me under. I didn't chase her. Not then. Chasing would have been easy, pounding on her door at dawn, begging on bended knee amid the jasmine-scented courtyards. But guilt is a heavier chain than love, and mine dragged me to a flea-bag hotel in the Santa Cruz alleys, where the walls were thin as tissue and the roaches threw better parties than the guests. I holed up there for 2 days, laptop open to half-drafted article, cursor blinking like an accusation. Valverde Empire's toxic legacy, a daughter's betrayal. No. That wasn't it anymore. The folder Raphael had given me painted a fuller picture, Javier's rogue schemes, the old man's quiet cover-ups to protect the legacy, Esther's own failed pushes for reform. It was human, messy, not the black and white takedown I'd pitched. Emails piled up, my editor foaming for copy, Javier's friendly cease and desist via courier. And Esther, silence, a void that echoed louder than any scream. On the third morning, as the cathedral bells tolled like a dirge, I cracked. I wandered to her studio, key still in my pocket like a talisman. The door was ajar, canvases stacked like tombstones. Inside, the air hung stale, turpentine sharp as regret. Her latest piece loomed on the easel, me, but fractured, face split between shadow and light, olive branches coiling around my throat like nooses. A tear stain blurred the signature, EV. For the storm that passed. I sank to the floor, sobs racking me until my ribs ached. How had I let it get this far? Back in New York, I'd been untouchable, jaded hack chasing scandals from the safety of my Williamsburg walk-up, dating baristas who ghosted after one too many deep conversations. Spain had softened me, or sharpened me, Esther had anyway. Her fire, her faith in the broken things, the scarred trees, the wandering artists, the women who lied for a living. I'd come to expose poison and found it in myself. By noon, resolve hardened. I couldn't run. Not from her. I penned a letter, old school, on hotel stationery scented with cheap soap, pouring it all, the assignment's birth in a dingy Tribeca office, the moment her laugh cracked my armor, the folder's secrets that could save her family if she led the charge. I love you still, in the jagged way storms love the sea. Forgive me, or don't. But fight, for the land, for you. I left it under her door, then headed to the hacienda, uninvited showdown be damned. Don Raphael met me on the veranda, sherry poured before I could speak. His eyes, lined like the grove's furrows, held no surprise. You look like hell, Nina. I laughed, brittle. Feels like it too. He nodded toward the folder on the table, my copy, annotated in his spidery script. Read it all. Then decide. Hours blurred in that library, truths unfolding, Javier's ambition born of their mother's death from a rare cancer, toxins suspected but unproven, Raphael's complicity as shield for his children, Esther's silent rebellion, funding clean water initiatives from her art sales. It wasn't absolution, but it was context, a tapestry of love and loss I'd ignored in my zeal. Javier burst in at dusk, flanked by suited goons, face thunderous. You. Out. Or the police get your little exposé early. Raphael rose, slow as judgment. No, hijo. She stays. We end this. The confrontation crackled, Javier's rage a wildfire, accusations flying like sparks. She's poison. Using Esther like a stepping stone. I flinched, but held ground. And you're the one dumping it in the rivers. For what? A yacht in Marbella. The room iced. Javier paled, then lunged, not for me, but the folder. Raphael blocked him, voice breaking. Enough. We fix this. Together. Or lose everything. In the chaos, my phone buzzed, Esther. Plaza de Toros. Now. Heart in throat, I bolted, hailing a cab through twilight streets alive with evening strollers. The bullring loomed, a coliseum of red stone and shadowed arches, empty save for her silhouette on the sand, easel set up under the floodlights. She painted furiously, strokes broad and furious, a storm over olives, branches snapping in wind. I approached slow, boots crunching. You came. She didn't look up. The letter. It gutted me. Brush paused, dripping cerulean. But I knew, Mary. Deep down. The flinches, the late nights. I stayed because I wanted to believe in us. Tears streaked her cheeks, mixing with paint. I knelt, sand gritting my knees. I want to believe too. The story's dead. Unless you want it told, your way. Clean. Human. She turned then, eyes raw. And you? What's your way now? We talked till stars pricked the sky, words tumbling like confessions in a cathedral. Her pain, my shame, the fragile thread of what we'd built. I can't just forget, she said finally, voice small. But I can't let you go without fighting for what's right. Dawn crept in as we walked out arm in arm, not lovers yet, but survivors. The ring's gates clanged shut behind us, a punctuation on the night's fury. The reckoning unfolded not in screams, but in the quiet alchemy of olive presses at dawn. Esther and I drove to the groves together, the folder between us like a fragile truce. Javier had slunk off to Madrid, lawyered to the hilt, but Raphael's call had summoned the family elders, TIAs with rosaries clutched like lifelines, cousins who'd toiled the rows since Franco's fall. We gathered in the Cortijo's sala, air thick with the season's first press, golden oil pooling in vats, scent earthy and eternal. Esther stood at the head, my hand brushing hers under the table, a secret anchor. She laid it bare, the toxins, the bribes, the river's silent scream. Gasps rippled, then silence heavy as millstones. We've been guardians, she said, voice steady as the Guadalquivir, not butchers. This ends now. We go transparent, tests public, reforms funded from the Art Foundation. Or we lose the soul of it all. Eyes turned to Raphael, who nodded, tears carving paths through his weathered cheeks. For your mother, Mija. For the land. It wasn't absolution, audits loomed, fines would bite, but it was rebirth. Javier's empire cracked, but the family's heart mended, stitch by painstaking stitch. In the weeks that followed, Seville softened around us, autumn's gold gilding the leaves like forgiveness. I stayed, not as infiltrator, but witness. My editor raged, then relented to a pivot, redemption in the groves, a Spanish dynasty's green reckoning. Esther's byline beside mine, her paintings illustrating the spread. We worked side by side in her studio, elbows bumping over laptops and canvases, laughter creeping back like ivy on walls. "You're terrible at margins," she'd tease, smudging my cheek with graphite. I'd steal a kiss, quick and sweet. "And you're addictive." But healing wasn't linear. Nightmares woke me, visions of her face in the rain, crumpling like wet paper. She'd hold me then, murmuring Andalusian folk tales till my breaths evened. "We're like the olives," she'd say. "Bruised, but the pressure makes us better." One evening, as we strolled the Feria de Abril's delayed echoes, lanterns swaying, cassettes pulsing with Belarius, she stopped under a string of lights. "Mary Ellis, you stormed in and wrecked me. But I'd do it again." Her hand in mine, warm and sure. "Stay. Not undercover. Just us." I did. Christmas came wrapped in magic, mistletoe hung from the Giralda's shadow, illegally, of course, tamales smuggled from a Triana Abuelita, and a quiet vow exchanged on her rooftop as fireworks bloomed over the river. No rings, no grand gestures, just her head on my shoulder, the city's heartbeat syncing with ours. Javier resurfaced in spring, humbled by a plea deal, offering an olive branch, literally, a sapling from the clean groves. "For the family," he muttered. Esther hugged him fierce, I hung back, but nodded. Redemption's a group portrait, after all. By summer, the sustainable line launched, Valverde Verdant, bottles etched with her serpentine vine. We toured the presses, her in a sundress that hugged her like memory, me snapping pics for the follow-up piece. Workers who'd once whispered fears now toasted us with rebujitos, their faces sun-kissed and hopeful. "You too," one grizzled foreman said, clapping my shoulder, like the rain after drought. Esther blushed, squeezed my hand. Later, in the shade of a millennial tree, she sketched me anew, not fractured, but whole, branches cradling rather than choking. It's been a year now, give or take the storms. I teach journalism workshops at the uni, trading shadows for spotlights. She paints series on resilient roots, galleries from Barcelona to Brooklyn clamoring. We argue over whose turn it is for Café con Leche runs, steel weekends in the Costa de la Luz, bodies tangled in salt-stiff sheets. Love, real love, isn't the fairy tale, it's the daily grind, the choice to stay when the easy path beckons home. Looking back, that rainy night in the tapas bar feels like a lifetime ago, or another woman's story. I went undercover seeking truth, found it in the curve of Esther's smile, the calluses on her hands from brushes and branches. Betrayal scarred us, but it didn't define us. We grew through it, like the groves after fire, stronger, deeper rooted. And in the quiet hours, when the world's noise fades, I trace her tattoo and whisper thanks. For the pretending that got too real. For the girlfriend who became my home. In the end, it's not about the exposé or the empire. It's the human thread, the forgiveness we clawed from the dirt, the love that bloomed defiant against the odds. Here's to us, then, two women, one story, endless olives under an endless sky.